Hey, PJ here with Warbird Alley and Horizon Hobby. I was asked to give some information on how I weather different airplanes, and this is kind of a unique weathering technique because with the Japanese aircraft, if you look at some of the real ones and some of the old pictures, you'll notice how the paint is sort of flaked off, especially around the nose area. And this was because the pigment that they used in the paint back then during World War II was not very good and would actually flake off as the airplane flew and was, having G's put on it and so forth and so on. So I wanted to kind of go over real simple steps on how I do it. And of course, this is one of many different methods that people use, but it's the one that I like. So if you look at the nose of this Meister scale Japanese Zero, I'm doing this for a good friend of mine, Barry Rayborn. You can see where it's flaked off in the nose. And then as you start going back to the fuselage, that starts to kind of go away and more of a rubbing effect. And if you look on the top of the wing there, you see how the paint looks like it's kind of faded. And I'm going to explain a little bit on how to do that. So first, let's talk about some of the materials that you'll need and bring it down here. This isn't in any particular order, but I use for rubbing off some of the paint, I like to use this. It's quadruple zero steel wool. If you notice, there's different types. This will take longer, but what it doesn't do is because it's so thin, you won't scratch off any of the paint. You won't see scratch lines if you were to sand it. This is ducting tape, not duct tape. I use it from 3M. You can get this from Home Depot or Lowe's. This is a very, very important tool. It's a piece of wood that I use for actually rubbing the tape on. And of course, you'll need Windex, and I'll explain to that later. Okay, so before we get started, I want to kind of show you some painting techniques that I use. If you look at the airplane, of course, this is a fiberglass fuselage, and even with the wood covered in glass, it doesn't really matter. But if you can see, everything's smooth. There are rivets on it. This is the side I haven't done. I don't know if the video will show it, but you can kind of see maybe up here in this area, you can kind of see where the paint is a little bit faded, kind of up here. And what I've done to accomplish this, with the Meister Scale Zero, it's already primered. And so what I had to do was some very little wet sanding, and then I spray painted a silver base coat. Now people always ask what type of silver, and I always say just the cheapest silver you can find, or aluminum really is what you're looking for. Depending on how easy you want the top cover of paint to flake off, you might want to get a shinier silver. I like to get flat aluminum, which you can get something like that from, I get it from Lowe's. You can probably get it from Home Depot or any of those stores. And I spray the whole thing, make the whole thing aluminum. It's pretty cool because all of the rivets will then pop out. I also use the green that I use. I really like Tamiya spray paint just in the little cans. Yes, it takes a lot, but I love how it goes on because it goes on so thin. I haven't touched this. And so some of the paint, if you could put the thing up here a little bit, if you can see right there, there's a little blob right there where I did not get the paint totally on. And for this purpose, that's fine. Because you don't want your top coat to be very, very heavy because you're going to be scraping most of that off. So what I do to start the flaking technique, as you can see, I'm going to get a piece of tape here. I just cut off a small section because it doesn't matter. And I've got my very expensive rubbing tool. You can use a piece of wood, or you can call me, and for $5.99, I'll get you one. Pull the tape off, and then you see maybe right here where this panel line goes in, and I'll just take this, I'll lay it on so far like this, get down in those panel creases, and just sort of rub it. Kind of like that, right? And then what I'm going to do is just take it and pull it off. See that little tiny piece right there? That came off. And some areas it's going to be easier, some areas it's going to be harder. And then pull it off. There's a nice little tiny spot right there. If you get a spot like here, again, it just depends on how much work you want to put on it. Pull it off. There's the flaking. Now see how it's straight right there? I like that because there's a panel line that kind of goes right here. If you wanted to get a little bit more in that area or not, you can kind of just do this a little bit and pop a little bit more. But you only get about 2 or 3 good pulls with the tape. Now, if you find yourself where you've done maybe a little bit too much paint and it's not pulling off, you can believe it or not, get a heating gun and you can lay it on there, heat up the paint a little bit, and then do the exact same mode. But be very careful because you can wind up pulling all the paint off. Now, I will post a picture of my Zero that I have that I did. It was a Meister Zero that I flew in Top Gun a couple of years back, and I flaked it out really, really bad. But Barry said, hey, make it look good, but not like it's been in the war for 500 years. So we're not going to flake this very much. When I come back, I'm going to do another technique on the top end to kind of rub off some of the paint, because it's more than just flaking. Okay, so as you can see, I've flaked it a little bit more. One other thing I do want to show you, keep the camera right there, but when you want to get some of these small pieces, I don't want to do too much, but I take this, hold it like this, and just kind of pop it a little bit like that real quick. You're not going to get much, but again, in and around the panel lines, you can see where it's starting to kind of pop. But anyway, so now we've got a little bit of flaking. And again, it's just a matter of how much you want to do it. Now, I'm going to come around you because I need to use it for my right hand. So I got my Windex. You can use any type of soapy. Some people use soapy water. I like Windex because it evaporates quick. So again, what I want to do here is, as the airplane has been sitting out in the sun, it's going to be bleached. Paint's going to start to fade. And so what I'm trying to do now, as you notice, I haven't done the rest of the fuselage. I've really just kind of done this panel. And so I'm only going to focus on here. Using pictures, if you see on the top of the fuselage here, kind of see how that looks like it's been faded. So on the top, when I brush it on, I'm going to go with the airflow, right? And then around the fuselage, you can kind of see some lines. I'm going with gravity. So rain and soot and stuff while the airplane's been sitting out in the hot sun. So that's what we're going to try to do here. So again, because the airplane's setting this way and the rain hits it and stuff going down, I'm going to scrape this way, right? So I use the Windex and just basically get it kind of good. I put my 2 fingers here so I can regulate the pressure. Really all I'm doing right here is just getting the Windex and the soap going, right? And then I see a light area right here, so I'm going to kind of start there, and here we go. And as you see, you can start to see stuff coming out. You'll start seeing some of my rivets popping out, the panel lines coming out. As you see, I'm using my fingers, and yes, I will go this way along the panel lines. But what I'm trying to do is I'm watching these areas to see that silver that I painted earlier coming through. Now here's kind of a cool thing. As you'll notice, now I'm going with the airflow now because I'm on top of the airplane. But if you'll notice, all of the raised areas are getting hit first and are starting to fade out. Now watch how much this will pop out when I use the rag to dry it off. Look at that. So now I've got that faded look. Now I noticed personally PJ doesn't like how there's kind of a line here. So I'm going to give a little bit of a focus in this area, maybe around this kind of guy. I feel like Bob Ross. Let's do a happy little flake right here. But again, I'm just using my hands. I have to really watch it because I'll tell you, with the Windex, it will look like you're not doing much. And then all of a sudden, when you're fading it off, you'll get a lot more. So again, as the rivet line, if you remember, that's where they're punching the aluminum across the frames. So that's going to stick out. That's necessarily going to get hit more any kind of stretch areas. So wipe it off. And now you can see that our nose is starting to look like the rest of the fuselage. I'll turn this up here because right up here on the top, we need a lot of, I mean, certain airplanes, I'll fade almost all of it off. So now I'm going with the airflow. Again, I'm focusing on the areas that stick out. Giving some love on these panels, hatches, whatever. You'll start seeing all this stuff pop out. Rivets are starting to pop out. But again, what I'm trying to do here is really fade the top because that got direct sunlight as it was setting either on a carrier or setting out just on the sun. Look at that. Very easy to do. And now we have a really faded airplane. So that's basically the method. Honey, I'm going to turn this around so you can kind of see how it looks all the way. Now, I still got a little bit to do maybe right here. Again, this is just for the flaking and the ripping of the paint. I will go through and actually weather with some soot and some other things. And if you guys like this video, I'll do that and show you how I put the soot and grime on it. So anyway, I hope you like the video. I hope it helps you a little bit. Feel free to call or text or anything. I love to share my methods, and I will show you some pictures and some updates when I get the wings and stuff done. But for now, thank you for taking a look. Again, PJ with Horizon Hobby and Warbird Alley.